Coming in number 10 today, we have Lea Michele. It's fair to say that Lea Michele is a celebrity whose reputation precedes her. The star who shot to fame after landing the lead role as Rachel Berry in Glee back in 2009, and since she's been the center of several scandals. Recently, during her appearance on The Tonight Show, after the show aired, she would spark some fresh backlash after she could be seen moving Sadie Sink out of the way so she could take center stage. When Lea was announced on the show, she would walk onto the stage and she would briefly touch Sadie's arm before reaching across to shake Jimmy's hand. Even though Trake was closer to her than Jimmy, she stepped forward to shake his hand and awkwardly stood in front of Sadie until Sadie decided to move aside to give Lea her spot. In addition, soon after the introductions, Jimmy told Sadie to take a seat on the right of him and Lea to the left, and Sadie had to take a step back to accommodate Lea before crossing over to the stage so she could get to her designated spot. The situation did not go unnoticed, as soon fans would start to praise Sadie for being humble by the way she reacted to Lea's disrespectful and immature attitude. Number 9, Emma Roberts. Back in 2017, podcast host Jane Hunt and Robert Ackerman sparked a viral rumor that actor Lea Michele can't read or write. Since the podcast, fans have been pointing out moments that prove the actress couldn't read, and up until now it's pretty much just been a huge speculation. However, during an episode of Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, Emma Roberts decided to play coy about whether her friend Lea Michele could read, and by doing so, she would reveal that the rumors are actually true. During the interview, Andy Cohen would say to Emma that the biggest misconception people have about Lea Michele is that she can't read. Instead of shutting down the rumor, Emma decided to skirt around the question with a joke and said, "Well, we've not been in a book club together." While Michelle did try to confirm in a tweet back in 2018 that she can actually read, Emma's joke would definitely prove otherwise. Even though Emma did try to keep things sweet and try to offer some sweet support to her friend by shouting out her Broadway show, the part about Lea not being able to read definitely didn't go unnoticed. Hey my little peaches, are you liking this video so far? If so, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Coming in number 8, we have Whoopi Goldberg. 2022 was filled with controversy for Whoopi Goldberg as she continues to rebuild her image in the spotlight. It appears that the crew at the ABC daytime favorite show has appeared to be lending a helping hand towards the star. On January 4th, joined by her former talk show members on an episode on The View, she took the spot of the moderator on the show, meaning she was in charge of teeing up links and starting debates and conversations. But Whoopi's prominence on the show didn't stop there, as an insider would soon reveal that the crowd was also encouraged to cheer her on the loudest. As the crowd was warmed up by comedian Regina DeSico, specifically, she told everyone to give a loud applause to Whoopi and then continue clapping for the other host. It seemed like the crew wanted Whoopi to get a standing ovation to make her feel like she was the star of the show. She also carried herself as if she had all the authority on the show, and she even was seen talking over the other co-hosts and interrupting them, which isn't exactly a great way to start her comeback. But if someone has to encourage the crowd to cheer for you the loudest, it's a pretty clear sign that your time in the industry is almost up. Number 7, Chris Harrison. Chris Harrison's time away from the Bachelor franchise has really started to take a toll on him. More than a year after he defended a contestant's previous racist behavior in an infamous extra interview, the TV personality has finally addressed all the controversy in a debut episode of the most dramatic podcast ever. In the episode, he would say, "I think I need time to figure out what I want to say. How I felt that mistake doesn't reflect who I am or what I stand for." While his extra comment marked the beginning of his Bachelor downfall, Chris has been left feeling heartbroken, gutted, and embarrassed, and he stated that the backlash took a toll in more than one way. In the podcast, Chris would also state that his comments made him feel sick and worry about his children, loved ones, and family, and since he decided to step down from his role on The Bachelor, he hasn't been able to watch the show, but he has been keeping an eye on the ratings and believes the show is declining in ratings because he's no longer on the show, and that hurts him a bit. Number 6, Sam Smith. Rumor has it that Adele and Sam Smith may have more in common than just their heavenly voices, as fans are speculating that they are actually the same person. During an episode of The Drew Barrymore Show, Sam would reveal the craziest rumor they've ever heard about themselves, and it was that they were actually secretly the Hello singer in drag. In the episode, Sam would say, "Everyone seems to think that I'm Adele in drag cause we've never been in the same room together. And if you slow down her voice, it sounds maybe a bit like mine. So people think we're the same person and I'm just in drag right now." While some fans in the past have made theories on social media, like one person tweeting in 2018, "Anyone notice Adele isn't at the Grammys this year?" It's because Adele and Sam Smith are the same person and you never see them both in the same place at the same time. Others have even begun to mock the singer on Twitter, suggesting Sam made up the rumor, with one person tweeting, "Sam Smith says the craziest rumor they've heard about themselves is that they're secretly Adele in drag. Never heard that one before." And honestly, wherever the rumor stemmed from, someone definitely owes Adele an apology for this one. Number 5. James Corden. On January 2nd, 2023, James Corden appeared on The Drew Barrymore Show, and James would be asked why he was leaving the CBS talk show after what would be 8 years on air. James would then recall a story from 2 summers ago when he was shooting his Amazon Prime video series Mammals. In an interaction with his son Max, who was now 10 at the time, it made him realize that he wanted to spend more summers with his son because he only had 6 more left. While James said he didn't want to cancel the show, he would then blame the situation on his son. However, the timing of him deciding to leave his show just seems more like a career move and reputation thing rather than a reason to spend more time with his son and family, because since entering into the spotlight, James has been a part of several controversies, such as back in October, the comedian's reputation took a huge hit after Keith McNally banned James from his restaurant in New York City and labeled him as a tying cretin of a man who was the most abusive customer he has ever seen, after James was caught yelling at a server who got his wife's egg yolk omelet wrong. Number 4. Chelsea Handler. While Chelsea didn't seem to end her career this year on a talk show, she did decide it was a good idea to mock several huge controversial topics from last year during her monologue at the 2023 Critics' Choice Awards. While the star went on to reference things like the Don't Worry Darling press tour, the Roe vs. Wade Supreme Court overturning. When announcing the cast of The Bear and that they were at the ceremony, Chelsea would then joke about the drama surrounding James Corden from a New York restaurant and how he showed us working in the restaurant industry is miserable. Chelsea then went on to mention that the controversial celebrity diet culture is just insane, and while Chelsea was trying to find a way to have a great time and make everyone feel comfortable, welcomed, and feel like they belonged and to be at the show, she definitely took things a little too far, and all she did was put herself into a little bit of a hole that's going to be difficult to climb out of to save her reputation and career. And not to mention, just a couple of days before, she would make an appearance on The Tonight Show where she would confess that she didn't realize that the sun and the moon weren't the same thing until she was 40. Yeah, let that one sink in. Number 3. Eddie Murphy. The original script for Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home originally had a large role written specifically for Eddie Murphy, who at the time was a box office star coming off the heels of a successful film, Beverly Hills Cops. And additionally, Eddie was interested in appearing in the movie as he was a big Star Trek fan. He even met with the producer, Harvey Benner, and director, Leonard Nimoy, to discuss the part, which he was ultimately decided to not take. When he turned down the role, he originally said it was because he thought making the movie Golden Child would be a better fit for his career, but then recently on his appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, he would offer up another explanation when he said, yeah, you know which one it is. It's the one where they go to San Francisco and they get the whales. I was going to be in that one. I met with them. They met when they got to San Francisco, and I said no. I want to go beam up and be on the ship, so I didn't do it. This definitely has some die-hard Star Trek fans screaming as they would have done anything to play this part in the film, and Eddie just turned it down because he wouldn't be beamed up into the ship. Number 2. Prince Harry. On January 8th, Prince Harry made his very first TV appearance since his highly anticipated memoir Spare was leaked. In a pre-recorded interview with the British anchor Tom Bradby, Harry would address some of the most explosive claims in his book that included his confession to taking substances and his fractured relationship with his family. While the star said he was grateful to have the chance to tell his story in his memory and said he'd still be part of the royal family, he wouldn't wouldn't have had the opportunity to share this story, many fans of the royal family have stated that Prince Harry definitely should have kept this book hidden in the closet with his dirty laundry, as he and Meghan have been slammed by newspaper columns and the media for a slew of lies that have caused them to mock the royal family as they try to move on and claim to live their own lives. Which has left us all to wonder when this is all just going to stop. Family feuds happen and it's normal. What's not normal is that you bring your family drama to the light and try to claim they wronged you without bringing any key facts to your story. Like, how do we know it's true at this point? And coming in number 1 today, we have Piers Morgan. Seems like Piers Morgan doesn't know how to stay out of the hot seat, as recently he would find himself surrounded by controversy once again, as this time he chose to go against the Queen of Pop after Madonna posted a video announcing her next tour. Morgan on his Talk TV show then said that Madonna, who is 64 years old, is a hot mess, and he even went out of his way to express that she should be put out of the pasture. He also took the opportunity to criticize the fact that she still tries to be a foxy kitten even though she's over 60. After his show, he then decided to bring his rant to Twitter, where he said he thinks Madonna has become the biggest cringe-making fiasco in the entertainment world. Fans definitely weren't happy with Morgan's words, and many just continue to call him out on his insensitive, misogynistic, and even labeled him as a cruel person for his words. Starting off our list today in the number 10 spot, we have Jimmy Kimmel. After numerous clips of Jimmy Kimmel wearing a blackface on his 90s talk show, The Man Show, resurfaced and went viral. The late night host apologized for his embarrassing portrayals of black celebrities, including NBA star Karl Malone. Jimmy would then release a statement in June 2020, and in it he would say, "I have long been reluctant to address this, as I knew doing so would be celebrated as a victory by those who equate apologies with weakness and cheer for leaders who use prejudice to divide us. The delay was a mistake." Jimmy then regretted his past decisions and went on to further his apology by saying, "There is nothing more important to me than your respect, and I apologize to those who are genuinely hurt or offended by the makeup I wore or the words I spoke." And while the apology was definitely a step forward for the star, it makes us all hope in the future he will use his voice and platform to spread love and not hate. Number 9, Wendy Williams. When Wendy Williams dedicated a July 2021 segment to a 19-year-old TikTok star who passed away, instead of paying tribute to the teen, she took a different approach. And it almost seemed like she was turning the TikTok star's passing into a joke. In the segment, she even went on to say, "I have no idea who this is. Neither does one person in the building." If things couldn't get any more worse, she then also turned to the crowd to note, "He's got more followers than me, 2.5 million, before bragging that she had more Instagram followers than him. His mother, Chanel Clark, who was actually watching the show at the time but then later turned to Philadelphia's CBS 3 to share with the media outlet that she didn't appreciate Wendy's commentary when she said, "Like, as a mother, Wendy Williams, how dare you?" She then went on to note that she found the whole episode just to be rather disrespectful in general. Hey everyone, I really hope you're enjoying this video so far. If so, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And subscribe to the channel so you never have to miss out on what I might just cover next. And trust me, you don't want to miss out on the next video because it has some serious tea in it. Number 8, Ellen DeGeneres. When the Ellen DeGeneres show was under investigation in the summer of 2020, the world would come to learn that not just one former staff member but multiple former staff members accused Ellen of creating a toxic workplace environment. Trying to cover up all of the commotion surrounding all of the rumors that were being leaked, Ellen would then later send her team a lengthy memo where she would apologize to her former staff members for making them feel uncomfortable, and she even went on to promise that going forward, things were going to change so that everybody could feel safe while working in the studio. While many of her celebrity friends, including Katy Perry and Kevin Hart, came out to defend the star, others like Brad Garrett and Leah Thompson claimed they had heard about the negative experiences. Warner Media would then be forced to launch an investigation into the show in July of 2020, shortly before filming resumed. And after the investigation was completed, they decided it would be best to end Ellen's show. And it was truly sad, as there were so many moments on the show that made us all smile and hope for the best. Number 7, 7. Jimmy Fallon. Back in 2016, Jimmy Fallon decided he was going to sit down for an interview with the then presidential candidate Donald Trump. And with the interview failing miserably, the Tonight Show host would find himself being heavily criticized. Many viewers then started to blame the talk show host for everything from normalizing Trump enough to get him elected, or even having Trump's ratings decline. But in another reflection on the moment, even Jimmy has now admitted that he did screw up. In an interview for Awards Chatter, which is a podcast made by The Hollywood Reporter, Fallon expressed his regret about ruffling Trump's hair on the show when he said, "I'm sorry, I don't want to make anyone angry. I never do and I never will. It's all in the fun of the show. I made a mistake. I'm sorry if I made anyone mad. And looking back, I wouldn't do it again." But I mean, the way he rubbed Donald's hair really made him look like this cute little golden retriever puppy, and Donald was really enjoying the process. Number 6. Joy and Meghan McCain. When it comes to the View host, we all know they're known for butting their heads over difficult political views. However, when Joy decided to make an offhand remark about not missing Meghan McCain while she was on maternity leave, it would cause the Arizona native to leave the show behind for good after being on the show for 4 years. During a heated exchange on an episode in January 2021, Meghan would tease Joy for her remarks by saying, "You missed me so much when I was on maternity leave." Joy then quickly responded to Meghan's statement by saying, I did not miss you. 0. Later, Meghan would then sit down for an interview with Variety before her August 2021 exit, and she would explain to the media outlet that the public squabble actually led for her to have a panic attack after filming Wrap, when she said, "I couldn't stop crying, and I'm not always crying. I couldn't expose myself, so I threw up in a garbage can," before adding, Joy never even apologized for making the rude comments. Number 5. Jon Stewart and Tucker Carlson. During a 2014 appearance on Tucker Carlson's former CNN show Crossfire, the former Daily Show host Jon Stewart accused Tucker and his co-host of partisan hackery and hurting America. The interview then sparked a lot of outrage, and Jon even addressed the heated exchange just days after the Crossfire episode aired on his own Comedy Central show, when he came out to say, apparently, when you invite someone on the show called Crossfire, you express an opinion. They don't care for that. The political debate show was then cancelled 1 year later, and Paul even went on to accuse Jon's appearance of being the final nail in the show's coffin. In March of 2021, Jon then reignited his feud with the Fox News correspondent when he made a tweet saying, "It's high time I apologize. I never should have lumped you in with that terrible, terrible person." Number 4. Alec Baldwin. At one point in time, Alec Baldwin had his own talk show. Well, that was until he made one pretty questionable move. Alec's MSNBC show would then end up being cancelled in November 2013 after the famously outspoken 30 Rock actor started to make headlines after he offended the LGBTQ+ community with a slur while he was in New York City. Feeling ashamed for everything he said after taking the time to reflect and learn about the hurt he caused, he would then come forward with an apology, and with his apology, he would say, "Words are important. I understand that, and I will choose mine with great care going forward. What I said and did this week as I was trying to protect my family was offensive and unacceptable." Number 3. Whoopi Goldberg. So we all know Whoopi Goldberg's show has always been pretty controversial, but I think we were all shocked after she made some pretty concerning comments about history, because the star made some hurtful anti-Semitic remarks and directed them towards the Jewish community. Kim Godwin, the president at ABC, would then come forward in a statement and say, effective immediately, I am suspending Whoopi Goldberg for 2 weeks for her wrong and hurtful comment. While Whoopi has apologized, I've asked her to take the time to reflect and learn about the impact of her comment. The entire ABC News organization stands in solidarity with our Jewish colleagues, friends, family, and communities. Hours after the incident, the Oscar winner also apologized for her remarks during an appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and she would say it upset a lot of people, which was never ever my intention. She then later headed to her Twitter to also issue another formal apology. Number 2. Sharon Osbourne. The talk show host Sharon Osbourne once made headlines back in November 2013 when she slammed all the ladies on the show after she made an appearance on the Arsenio Hall show. Even though the star tried to claim that she was actually a really big fan of Barbara Walker's and that she even idolizes her for the rest of the hosts on The View, she went on to throw some major shade at them when she pretty much said they could all go F themselves. After being criticized by fans, Sharon would then come out to apologize for her remarks, and she would tell all her fans she didn't want to come off as mean as she was, and that she was only trying to be funny. Then she went on to note that she actually had a lot of respect for all women, and that she wasn't really responsible for anything she says, as she's just a loose cannon. But I mean, sometimes funny is just not funny. Number 1. Megyn Kelly. So back in October of 2018, Megyn Kelly would come under fire after her name started to hit the headlines, after the star tried to defend why she was wearing blackface makeup while she was celebrating Halloween. Instead of issuing an apology, Megyn would head to her morning show to talk about the incident, and during the episode she would say, "When I was a kid, it was okay, just as long as you were dressing as a character." Megyn would then be forced to apologize in an email to her staff members, and later she even read a similar statement on air to apologize to all of the viewers on her show and her fans and to the United States. In the end, US would actually end up confirming 2 days later on that NBC actually canceled the Megyn Kelly Today in the wake of all the controversy.
Number 10. Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan has always divided TV audiences, but he gained new notoriety after taking on the Duchess of Sussex. The host of Good Morning Britain abruptly left the show from broadcaster ITV after questioning whether Meghan Markle was being truthful when she told Oprah Winfrey that she had dark thoughts of self-harm before stepping back from her duties as a member of the royal family. Morgan's comments sparked a backlash and triggered an investigation by Ofcom, the country's media regulator, which received a record 57,100 complaints about his remarks. Despite leaving the show just drenched in shame, he did try to keep his career going by moving to another news source, only that one's more like one of those online news sources, you know the ones I'm talking about. Number 9. Chris Harrison. Chris was a longtime host of the popular reality show The Bachelor and its female counterpart The Bachelorette. Chris was forced to permanently exit the show after coming under fire earlier this year for defending a contestant's past racist behavior. Harrison, who has hosted the popular franchise for almost 20 years, stepped aside from his role in February after he defended former Bachelor contestant Rachel Kirkconnell, who was shown in photos attending an antebellum plantation-themed fraternity formal in 2018. Harrison made the comments defending Kirkconnell during an extra interview with former Bachelorette Rachel Lindsay. In his interview with Lindsay, Harrison expressed sympathy for Kirkconnell and implied that the criticism directed against her was unfair because the photos were from the past. When Lindsay said it was not a good look that Kirkconnell attended a party celebrating the antebellum South, a time period when slavery was still present, Harrison said, "Well, Rachel, is it a good look in 2018 or is it not a good look in 2021? Because there's a big difference." Hey Chris, yeah, it's not a good look ever. He later admitted he made a mistake and that he was seeking guidance from a race educator and strategist, which I'm not really sure what that person does. Alright, here's how we're not gonna be racist today. Number 8. Bill Maher. Bill has always been a man of controversy, literally hosting a show called Politically Incorrect for years before being canceled in the early 2000s. He's since gone on to host his own show again called Real Time with Bill Maher, a show that may finally be getting the cancellation treatment thanks to Bill just being an absolute menace to society. Bill has shared a few controversial opinions on his talk show, but he's also spouted some pretty rough language saying words that nobody should ever say, especially the N-word, which he just casually threw around during a live exchange with the Senator of Nebraska, Ben Sasse, in 2017. He was immediately called out by millions of people begging for the cancellation of his show on HBO, but instead of canceling the show, HBO released a statement claiming that his language was inexcusable and tasteless, and then they just removed the word from the edited version. While his career as a talk show host hasn't really suffered, and there's plenty of terrible people to interview, his career as a comedian has gone nowhere but down the drain. Number 7. Joe Rogan. Joe was once the host of one of the most intense reality game shows of all time, Fear Factor. Right? Just mentioning that name makes me feel like I've got cockroaches crawling all around me. Seriously, whose idea was that? Eventually, Joe moved on from the world of live game shows and moved to live gladiator fights, aka UFC. As a sports commentator, Joe has been adored by fans, becoming a staple in the world of ultimate fighting. However, he also decided it would be an epic idea to start a podcast podcast and invite everyone and anyone under the sun, including several fake doctors and media men, to spread lies to the world while fueling Joe's tiny ego. To make everything worse, Joe decided that since it was his show, he could say whatever he wanted, defending the situation surrounding the show's so-called misinformation. He is also one of those people who just casually likes to throw around the N-word when he feels like it's necessary. After saying too much on several episodes, Joe's career has been cemented as podcast host from now on. Like, if this man ever tries to rise, he's gonna fall hard into a pit of animal entrails. Seriously, why was Fear Factor a thing? Number 6, Sharon Osbourne. 2 years ago on the popular talk show The Talk, host Cheryl Underwood and Sharon Osbourne began to discuss the topic of racism amongst the recent firing of Sharon's personal friend Piers Morgan, also on this list, from Good Morning Britain over all the comments he made about the Duchess of Sussex. Sharon went off and began aggressively defending her friend, asking Cheryl what Piers said specifically that was racist. She then went on to say that she was being put into an electric chair, and due to her connection to Piers that she herself must also be racist. She went on to clarify that she did not support his comments per se, but that she did support his right to free speech. But like, he used that free speech to say messed up stuff, so maybe don't support him. She then asked Cheryl over and over again how she herself could be so racist. What has she done? What has she said? Well, Cheryl then signed off for a commercial break before Sharon let out some pretty choice expletives. When they returned, the tension almost seemed worse and the conversation continued to escalate. Eventually, Underwood was able to get her point across and calm Sharon down. However, the damage was done and the internet called for her immediate removal from the show. Number 5, James Corden. In one of the show's more popular bits, The Late Late Show had the Late Late lie detector. Corden asks his guests to hook up to a lie detector test and answer a series of questions on the air. During one segment of this bit, in which guest Kris Jenner was hooked up to the line, she was asked about her involvement in producing a certain tape with Kim. You know what I'm talking about. She was quick to roll her eyes and shake her head and say, "Oh no, no, no." And then the expert said, "True. Case closed." Nope, not even close, because the next day, Kim Kardashian's ex-boyfriend Ray J blasted the show, calling the segment fake and claiming that the man giving the test, John, was underqualified. Going on to call the network sad for allowing this segment to be aired and threatening to sue Corden and the show itself. A little digging was done and it turned out that there was some truth to these claims, as John's LinkedIn profile revealed that he had attended an unspecified number of lie detector academies, which sounds super made up. It also said that he had a bachelor in law, but that he didn't actually really finish the course. Whether it was this moment or one of the many missteps in James's show's history, the entire thing got canceled and James is a liar stuck looking for work. Number 4, Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen had one of the most successful daytime talk shows of all time until 2020. Her show became overwhelmed with accusations of toxic work environment from former employees. They were claiming that Ellen's happy exterior was nothing more than a fake facade put in place to keep the audience on her team. A small bit of proof came when she accused 50 Shades of Grey actress Dakota Johnson of not inviting her to a birthday party a few months prior. Dakota reminded her that she had in fact sent an invitation but received a notice from producers that she did not want to attend. Fans began questioning this awkward moment and the cracks in her appearance started getting bigger and bigger. Eventually, an article was released containing testimonies from several former employees, and there were just too many stories for this thing to be made up. Ellen canceled herself by denying every single thing that she was being accused of, and instead of acknowledging her faults and missteps as a boss, she didn't respond as you may think with like a public apology though. Instead, she was forced to cancel both herself and her show amid the controversy and has since been on a hiatus. Number 3, Howard Stern. Stern may have just been one of the best talk show guests in the 1990s and the early 2000s. While he's still stellar when he actually allows someone to interview him, he particularly rocked it when he was at his most outrageous. This is because he'd come on and just take over. For instance, his favorite guy was Jay Leno. Today we're going to talk about one instance specifically on the Jay Leno show. Jay sat back as one of his guests attacked Howard's longtime co-host Robin Quivers during a segment on his show for her allegiance with the shock jock. Not only did this anger Robin, but Howard was irritated. Howard has accused Jay Leno of stealing his bits from his radio show, as well as a host of other problems. In fact, he has publicly called Jay a crook numerous times, even on his own talk show, which is kind of what landed him on this list, and his hatred for such a universally loved man most certainly made an impact on his status as a radio celebrity. He still has a podcast to this day, but thanks to him sitting behind the microphone all the time, the world just kinda moved on. Number 2. Charlie Sheen. Charlie rose to fame in the early 80s after starring in a slew of cult classic flicks like Red Dawn, The Boys Next Door, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off in a brief but memorable cameo. He fell into the mainstream in 2003 when he began playing the character Charlie Harper in the hit sitcom 2.5 Men. It was so good that even just mentioning it got that theme song stuck in your head. Anyway, sorry. However, in 2009 he was arrested for attempting to harm his wife Brooke Mueller on several occasions, and at the time of the arrest both parties had been indulging in adult beverages, with Sheen becoming enraged beyond control. Following this, a restraining order was placed prohibiting Sheen from being within 100 feet of both Brooke and their kids. Despite all the controversy, Charlie was later seen doing press for an upcoming movie on the Today Show when the interviewer asked Charlie what was behind his sudden behavior, claiming that he was being perceived as an angry and erratic man. Sheen responded with, No, it's my passion, before he launched into a no snow-fueled tirade. He claimed his brain functioned within a separate realm to ours. Charlie's interview was defensive to say the least, with his energy just being weird and aggressive the entire time. Ever since then, Charlie has maintained a strange air of arrogancy towards himself because he still thinks he's the king of TV and like winning, when in reality this is probably the first time you've heard about him in a while. And at number 1, Tom Cruise. Now, it's one thing to be asking people to join your church all the time, whatever, it's not a big deal, but Tom's behavior as a member of society has been rough to say the least. Following the announcement that he was engaged to Katie Holmes in the early 2000s, Tom appeared on an episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show that has gone down in history as one of the most chaotic TV interviews of all time. From the moment he walks on stage, he has this strange energy. He's oddly excited, like he just got told the best news in his entire life. He throws his arms up in the air, he rubs Oprah's shoulder like she's a lamp and he's trying to summon a genie. Tom jumped up on her couch, grabbed her hands over and over again. She couldn't even get her questions out that she had for him because he was just being so chaotic. Eventually, Oprah was like, whatever, just bring Katie out. And then the cameras followed Tom as he ran around the studio all Paranormal Activity style. The moment cemented Tom as a man with many hidden personalities. And while it hasn't really affected his work as an actor, ever since that day, whenever he is brought in for press or any kind of interviews, all entrances and exits must be locked at all times. Number 10, Hugh Grant. Hugh may be known for being a rom-com sweetheart, but there is a ton of evidence that proves that this guy is a massive jerk. Case in point, Hugh Grant's banned from Jon Stewart's very own late night show. Grant made an appearance on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart in 2009 that did not go very well. According to Jon, Hugh wanted nothing to do with the interview, being annoyed from start to finish. He had apparently been giving the crew a hard time because food wasn't the way he liked it, his dressing room wasn't right. During the interview, Hugh actually complained about the clip that the producers had chosen to show on air, saying it was a bad clip, to which Jon said, well, make a better movie then. The interview was so bad that I actually could not find a clip of it online. It's like Hugh paid the internet to hide the clip somewhere in the cloud. So if you end up finding it, please share it in the comments. I would really love to see it. Hugh was banned from appearing on Jon's show ever again, something he was not aware of until 2012, posting a tweet claiming Jon had every right to kick him to the curb. Number 9, Vince Vaughn. It started in 2010 when Vaughn raised some eyebrows following the release of the trailer for his movie The Dilemma, when his character made some controversial comments. Electric cars are gay is something that Vince Vaughn actually says. Not that they're like homo, I don't know, he says a lot of stuff. I don't feel like quoting it, it's pretty rough. The actor uttered a lot of really just nasty things about gay people during the previews for the film, and as a gay woman and icon for the LGBTQ community, one might imagine that remark didn't sit well with Ellen DeGeneres. Although measures were taken to remove this line from the trailer, Vince doubled down on his views, claiming that the preview should just be left alone, there was nothing wrong with it, defending the line as a joke that should not have been taken seriously. Following the comments, it was reported that he was banned from Ellen's show indefinitely. The rumors took over the internet, and Vince had little to say about the ban because it was never actually a real ban. It turns out the only reason that Vaughn stopped coming onto the show was because he had nothing to promote until 2016 when he made his return to the talk show. But that does mean that for 6 years Vince Vaughn was not getting a ton of film roles, he wasn't asked to make a lot of TV appearances, and even if he did, it was in a small capacity. Eventually, the so-called ban was lifted, and Vince revealed that there was no hate between himself and Ellen. Unfortunately, Ellen did not speak much to the rumored ban, so for 6 years the world thought that he was just an outcast. Number 8. Dax Shepard. Dax is a wonderful comedian and writer, being behind some awesome movies from the past few years. Schlocky classics like Idiocracy, Employee of the Month, and the buddy comedy Without a Paddle alongside Seth Green and Matthew Lillard. While doing promotion for that movie in 2004, Dax was invited onto The Late Night Show with Conan O'Brien. So he starts off the interview by falling over a table and knocking just a bunch of water onto Conan's floor. Great first impression. Conan then attempts to get some stories out of Dax related to the project or himself, but he instead opts to make jokes, tell Conan about a motorcycle accident he had, and improvising the DVD extras on Conan's special. If it weren't for Conan's yes and attitude, this interview would have ended in disaster. Conan later revealed that Dax had received a lifetime ban from his show, mainly due to the fact that Dax had just woken up 20 minutes before the interview had even started, after drinking no juice to the point of blacking out, which would probably explain why he's so groggy throughout most of the interview. This ban was eventually lifted after Dax put his partying days behind him, being clean and sober now for roughly 16 years. Number 7. Madonna. Piers Morgan is a terrible man, period. He has made some racially fueled comments over the years that were so bad he eventually got kicked off of CNN, but not before he issued a public ban to pop icon Madonna. Apparently the entire feud between these two stems from an incident involving bread rolls. I guess Piers was accidentally hit by a roll that Madonna threw or something. I don't know, the full story was never actually revealed in that case. But it can't just be a bread roll, because this man spent 20 years talking trash about Madonna, calling her names that I cannot repeat online. He was always trying to egg her on, telling her managers to stop tweeting him. Well, the joke is on Piers in this situation. Not only did his show eventually get cancelled, but Rosie O'Donnell actually banned Piers from her show in retaliation. He'd visited Rosie before, in fact, her show received almost double his views at the time, but he'd never be able to leech off of her again, making this entry a double whammy. Number 6. Howard Stern. Howard Stern may have been one of the best talk show guests in the 90s and the early 2000s. Now, while he's stellar when he actually allows someone to interview him, he particularly rocked it when he was at his most outrageous. This is because he would just kinda come out and take over. He appeared on many talk shows over the years, but there was never a rivalry quite like Stern versus Jay Leno. Apparently Jay didn't want to put out an edgy show, and Howard was just all edge. During one particular appearance on the show, Jay actually sat back and watched as a guest got into a fight with Howard and his longtime radio co-host Robin Quivers. This was not only the moment that Howard was banned for creating a scene, but it was also the moment that Howard vowed to despise Jay Leno for the rest of his life. The two never reconciled, and so far, it's looking like they never will. Number 5. Adrien Brody. Now, we're gonna throw Adrien in the middle because this is not a talk show, but this moment got him blacklisted from many shows. While hosting the late night sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live, Brody went off script in truly cringe-inducing fashion. When he came on the stage to present the musical act Sean Paul, he appeared in cartoonish dreadlocks and a tank top, using the most offensive Jamaican accent you've ever heard in your life. He was trying something that just did not work. The clip of this moment is only a minute long, but it feels like a lifetime. He was hosting in 2003, and since that live performance went south, not only has he been banned from SNL, but he's had very limited appearances on talk shows over the years. While some may claim it's due to a lack of work, others agree that wearing faux dreads and doing that on live TV is something you can't live down. Number 4. Harmony Korine. Harmony's name may not be familiar to you, but one of his movies might be. In 2012, Harmony directed a film called Spring Breakers, starring James Franco, Selena Gomez, and Vanessa Hudgens, but he's been around since the early 90s. While doing some promotions for a film in the mid-90s, Harmony got himself into a lot of trouble. He was visiting David Letterman, who claims that he caught Harmony rummaging through Meryl Streep's purse in her dressing room. Around this time, he was well known for being addicted to several illegal substances, especially spicy spoon juice, so he was doing everything he could to get his next fix. According to David, he went upstairs to greet Meryl before the show and knocked on the door door. Inside was not Meryl, but Harmony hunched over a purse in the corner rummaging like a raccoon. David told him to put everything back and to exit the building as soon as possible. A lifetime ban was issued and Corinne was blacklisted by fellow studios. Since then, he has been able to get clean and sober, and David issued a statement congratulating him on his sobriety and lifting his ban. Number 3. Conan. Conan O'Brien has been the host of his own late-night television series since 1993, originally hosting Late Night with Conan O'Brien before moving to his own series in 2010 simply titled Conan. The show may be a success now, but it actually comes from a feud with Jay Leno and a ban that lasted right up till 2014. One of Conan's biggest competitors on the late night scene was Jay Leno's Tonight Show. Both shows had strong ratings and had become staples in late night history, so when it came time to negotiate a new contract with the bigwigs at NBC, they told Conan that he would be moved to host the primetime Tonight Show in 5 years, something that he was very excited about, but something that they did not tell Jay. After the 5 years were over and the year was 2009, the decision was made to move Conan to The Tonight Show and Jay would get his own talk show. Well, the viewer numbers declined dramatically and it was obvious that this was not going to work. An argument took place between Conan and Leno, with both men fighting for their right to host. One show was going to have to go. Well, it was eventually decided that Conan and his crew would be given $45 million to go make their own show, while Leno returned to his desk. His triumphant return in 2010 was coupled with a lifetime ban from the show while he was still the host. He has since appeared to speak to current host Jimmy Fallon, but for a long time Conan was restricted to his own little studio. Number 2. Bobcat Goldthwait. Bobcat may not be much of an actor these days, but in the 80s and the 90s, this dude was dominating the film and comedy scene. His zany brand of over-the-top high-energy performance was well received by most people who saw him. In fact, he made Police Academy even better than they already were. In the mid-1990s, Bobcat's career was at its peak, meaning that he was making appearances left and right to promote projects, and one of those promotions was on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Bobcat is already a very chaotic man, but this stunt was the stuff of legends. At one point in the interview, Bobcat pulls out a can of lighter fluid, sprays it on his seat, and sets it on fire. The reason why he set it on fire was because he was attempting to make a joke with Leno and make a memorable talk show moment. Well, he certainly did. Leno didn't think it was funny at all. He actually made Bobcat sit in the mess after he puts out the fire. The studio charged Bobcat with recklessly causing a fire along with a misdemeanor. He was ordered to pay nearly $4,000 in fines and received 3 years of probation. As you may expect, he was blacklisted from ever appearing on that show so long as Jay Leno was the host. Number 1. Artie Lange. Comedian Artie Lange was a larger-than-life performer in the 90s and early 2000s. Now, Artie wasn't just a movie star, but he was also a co-host working with radio legend Howard Stern, who, we already talked about. Artie's career has been filled with controversy and negative news, as his long struggle with substance control issues has been very well documented. The ban comes from his longtime buddy Conan O'Brien, but it's not because of some big controversy. It was actually a move designed to encourage Artie to quit. Conan made it very clear that Artie would not be welcomed back as a guest until he was clean and sober. He had a rocky history when it came to talk shows, being intoxicated beyond belief for a majority of his TV spots. These days, Artie claims to be sober and has quit acting for good to focus on his mental health. Number 10. Mike Tyson. It's hard to pick just one Mike Tyson meltdown, so let's talk about all of them. He got his start in the world of professional boxing in the early 80s, but as the years went by, more and more controversies came to light. This is probably why he has such a troubled history with interviewers. In the mid-90s, he was speaking with a news anchor for Channel 5 News when he became annoyed at the line of questioning, suggesting that his recent 6-month hiatus may threaten his ability to box. Mike said, "F you," and a few other things that I'm not allowed to quote. But that wasn't even close to the level of fury that this dude is capable of. During a press tour for his latest bout in the early 2000s, he was wrapping up an interview when he lashed out at a fan in the crowd and started hurling insults at him left and right, calling them the British word for cancer sticks. The clip became viral overnight and placed his career even further into jeopardy than it already was. But he finally drove that last nail into the coffin on CP24's Breakfast Television after somehow maintaining enough relevance to get a one-man show. Mike was was sitting down with host Nathan Downer to promote the show when the interview took a hard left and went from "so what's this thing about" to "so should you even be allowed on stage, you gross man." It's not exactly what the interviewer said, but apparently that is exactly what Mike heard. He stopped answering the questions honestly and instead started responding with sarcastic insults and more F words and several threats towards the anchor. Seriously, whoever keeps letting that guy on camera really needs to stop. Number 9. Tom Cruise. Matt Lauer's not just a terrible dude who turned out to be creepy, he was once a popular talk show host in the early 2000s. During an interview with Tom Cruise in 2005, the topic of his scientific beliefs came up that quickly sent him into a rant about psychiatry. Somehow this topic got onto Ritalin and pseudosciences, and Tom started yelling at Matt about knowing more than him, like he had some kind of inside information that he was a secret therapist or something. The interview came at the height of Tom's very public descent into chaotic badness, becoming very famous for his outlandish beliefs and his wish to push them onto other people. The highlight of the interview came when Cruise was asked about his previous criticisms of Brooke Shields taking anti-sad time pills, to which he responded to calling Matt a glib. I don't know what that means, but look it up. This is only one of several interviews from 2005 that we could discuss today, but something tells me it won't be the last time that Tom appears on this list. Wink wink, nudge nudge, he's gonna be back. Number 8. Cardi B. In 2017, rapper Cardi B and model Asia Davies appeared on an episode of VH1's Love and Hip Hop talk show. Things started getting heated very quickly when the topic of Asia's ex-boyfriend Swift came up. According to Davies, she was convinced that Cardi and Swift were intimate together while she was still dating Swift. Cardi responded to the accusations by throwing her stiletto at Asia's face. She then jumped up and began making her way towards the model, but was stopped by 2 large security guards. Good thing too, considering on the other side of the room, Asia had been doing the exact same thing and was also being held back. An all-out brawl almost took place, but the altercation ended up being the pair yelling at each other across the room, with Cardi's main grievance being the judgment placed upon her by Davies for being an exotic dancer before her time as a music artist. While Davies claimed that wasn't the case, it was very clear from both their verbal and physical language that someone was holding something back. Number 7. Quentin Tarantino. While doing press for his latest masterpiece Django Unchained in 2013, critically acclaimed director Quentin Tarantino was involved in a very confrontational interview with Channel 4 news anchor Krishnan Guru Murthy. The interview was intended to be a bit of press for the project, but it quickly turned into a small profile piece on Quentin, with Krishnan asking him about several topics not related to the movie. He asked about Quentin's opinion on the backlash the project seemed to be receiving, before moving on to a broader subject on why he seems to enjoy putting so many graphic scenes in his movies. This is the moment that he snaps. Not only has he answered that question several times in the past, it literally had nothing to do with what he was brought on the show to discuss. Refusing to answer the question, Tarantino tells Krishnan that he is shutting his butt down. He had been nothing but accommodating up until that point, reacting fairly well to some of the more sensitive questions that he was asking, but he went too far and the director let this man have it. This wasn't the only time that Krishnan has caused a celebrity to lose their cool. A few years ago, he was interviewing Robert Downey Jr. about Age of Ultron when he once again went off script and asked him about his dark past rather than the project that he was promoting. This made Robert quickly stand up and thank him, remove his mic, and just walk away. Seriously, this dude needs to stop being put on camera. Number 6. Kanye West. Kanye was slowly going mad in the eyes of the public way back in 2010. As the years went by, he's made more and more TV appearances, but it wasn't until 2018 where his political beliefs got him heated on Jimmy Kimmel. When Jimmy asked Kanye how he felt about the response to his decree that he was all for President at the time Donald Trump, which was largely criticized, he defended his statements by claiming that he did not have to conform to some united mindset and that he was a little bit upset at the backlash, but that a part of him kind of enjoyed the hate. He then suggested the world was in a simulation, claiming that the world is just filled with unpaid actors. The over 20-minute interview was filled with metaphors, the concept of love, and a comparison to the Son of God. This interview was only a short time after his anti-Semitic tweets were circulating the internet. Ye even makes a joke about the anxiety of asking his publicist to appear on the show. He was fairly calm in his delivery of his opinions, but he made sure his opinions were known. Number 5. Steve-O. show. Steve was once a world-famous stuntman whose journey to sobriety is truly inspirational. Unfortunately, in his early years of fame, Steve was known for having a sweet tooth for illegal substances. This made him an excellent guest on late-night talk shows. Host of On Too Late, Adam Carolla, found out the hard way that you should never encourage Steve to do anything before he gets on camera. During one late-night appearance in the mid-2000s, the host is definitely on a few things. The host suggested that he had a few adult beverages in preparation for a game, but his speech is slurred beyond comprehension other than the B word being hurled at the audience over and over again. You know, the one that rhymes with snitch. He then begins to tell the host that he loves him, but he will end his life right there, and then he sloppily hugs Adam before trying to flip his chair with him inside of it. His issue with substances was very well documented throughout the years, but this late night appearance will forever live rent-free in my skull. Thankfully, as I mentioned, he won this battle and he's currently 15 years sober now, spending most of his time running a podcast with Adam. I have so much respect for this guy. He went from to, okay, let's hear a word from today's sponsor, Kombucha Kings. Number 4, Bobcat Goldthwait. Allow me to start this entry with an impression of Bobcat Goldthwait smelling something he likes. Thank you. Bobcat may not be much of an actor these days, but in the 80s and the 90s, he was dominating the film and comedy scene. His zany brand of over-the-top, high-energy performance was well received by any and all who saw him. I can still hear his voice echoing in my skull whenever I think of Police Academy. In 1994, comedian Arsenio Hall invited his longtime buddy Bobcat onto his talk show, which unfortunately was in its final days on air. When Bobcat heard the cancellation, he decided to send a message to the big brains that made the decision. He spray paints the word Paramount on the wall behind him, throws furniture around, breaks TV screens, all while Arsenio just kinda sits back and laughs. When they returned from commercial, the set was in ruins. Despite that though, Arsenio joked, saying, the worst part is I have to pretend like I'm mad at him. Joke's on him, that wasn't the only talk show meltdown that he's partaken in. A few years after this, Bobcat set a chair on fire on Jay Leno's show. For no reason, just for fun. Like he was standing there just going, oh, fire, yeah. Man, that guy was unhinged. He was fined over $3,000 and made to replace the chair. Oh, and in case you haven't noticed, he hasn't been asked to appear on any talk shows ever again. Number 3, Tom Cruise. Again. I told you he'd be back. Returning for another round on our list, you don't think we'd forget about Oprah, did you? Following the announcement that he got engaged to Katie Holmes in the early 2000s, Tom appeared on an episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show that has gone down in history as one of the most chaotic TV interviews of all time. From the moment he steps on the stage, things just begin to go horribly wrong. He throws his arms up in the air, he rubs Oprah's shoulders like she's got a stain that he just won't come out. Tom jumped on her couch, he grabbed her hands over and over, she couldn't even get the questions that she had out. Eventually Oprah was like, whatever, just bring Katie out, and the cameras followed Tom as he ran around the studio trying to find her like he was a nature guy running through a jungle with his camera crew behind him. The moment cemented Tom as a man with many hidden personalities. While it has not affected his work as an actor per se, ever since that day whenever he's brought in for press or any kind of interview, all entrances and exits must be locked at all times. Number 2, Crispin Glover. Crispin may not be very active in the Hollywood mainstream these days, but he has most certainly been in some of your top 10 favorite flicks. Being featured in movies like Charlie's Angels and Back to the Future, Crispin was always considered to be an eccentric man both on and off camera. In 1987, he made one of the most notorious appearances in late night television history. He was a guest on The Late Night Show with David Letterman and was supposed to promote a new indie flick called River's Edge. Instead, he delivered one of the most bizarre interviews of all time without any clear reason why. Many have speculated over the years that this was a staged bit, but nobody has ever actually confirmed that story. From the moment Crispin is brought on set, he seems to be distressed. He wore strange clothes, including black platform shoes, and instead of answering questions about the project, he decided to rant about his portrayal by the media, literally pulling out press clips and quoting them on the air. He claimed people thought that he was weak, and then challenged David to an arm wrestling match before getting out of his chair and delivering a high kick into David's direction. Getting just within inches of his face, David giggled and cut the interview short. Whether it was staged or not, Crispin's infamous interview will go down in history as one of the strangest of all time. And at number 1, of course, it's Charlie Sheen. Charlie rose to fame in the early 1980s after starring in a slew of cult classic flicks like Red Dawn, The Boys Next Door, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off in a brief but memorable cameo. He fell into the mainstream in 2003 when he began playing the character Charlie Harper in the hit sitcom 2.5 Men. So good that even just mentioning it gets the theme song stuck in your head. However, in 2009 he was arrested for attempting to harm his wife Brooke Mueller on several occasions. At the time of his arrest, both parties had been indulging in adult beverages, with Sheen becoming enraged beyond control. Following this, a restraining order was placed prohibiting Sheen from being within 100 feet of both Brooke and their kids. Despite all the controversy, Charlie was later seen doing press for an upcoming movie on the Today Show, when the interviewer asked Charlie what was behind his sudden behavior, claiming that he was being perceived as an angry and erratic man. But Sheen responded with, no, it's my passion, before launching into a no snow-fueled tirade. Charlie's interview was defensive to say the least, with his energy just being weird and aggressive the entire time. Ever since then, Charlie has maintained a strange air of arrogance towards himself, and he still seems to think that he's the king of TV and quote, winning, when in reality this is probably the first time you've heard about him in a while.
Number 10. Clive Anderson. It's important to note that while all late night hosts do work hard to remember what projects every single one of their guests is promoting, they can easily get mixed up from time to time, and that's exactly what brought forth one of the most awkward encounters in UK TV history. When the Bee Gees appeared on Clive Anderson's All Talk in 1997, they grew so tired of his continuous jokes about their music that they infamously just got up and walked off set. As a poor attempt at humor, the host made remarks about the group's appearance and said that he thought the band were sisters rather than brothers, and that only his dog loves their high-pitched music. But the big turning point came when Anderson said that the band will always be Les Tossers to me, and you could literally see Barry Gibb's face begin to darken. To make matters worse, when the singer tried to talk about a song that he had written earlier in his career, saying he had forgotten that one. Clearly not loving the atmosphere, Barry became sarcastic and said, "We're getting on like a storm, aren't we, Clive?" before getting up on his feet and cursing at the host. He got up and left, and after even more awkwardness, the other two eventually did the same. Number 9. Katie Couric. In 2014, the television personality invited trans model Carmen Carrera to appear on her talk show Katie. After Carmen discussed her modeling career, Couric began asking her really invasive questions about her transition, like, was the whole process painful physically for you? And your private parts are different now, aren't they? As the questions were becoming increasingly personal and insensitive, Carmen finally decided to say something. Quote, "I don't want to talk about it because it's really personal. I'd rather talk about my modeling stuff. I'd rather talk about being in W and maybe being in Italian Vogue and doing fun stuff and showing people that after the transition there's still life to live." It was actually a great opportunity for Carmen to demonstrate that she is more than her transition and that being trans is not the most interesting thing about her. For her part, Couric received some pretty intense backlash for her line of questioning, especially when Orange is the New Black star Laverne Cox appeared on the show and told the host that she was objectifying Carmen. It wasn't until 2017 that Couric revealed that she had the opportunity to cut the segment out of the interview altogether, but decided to keep it in as an educational moment for her audience. So she definitely learned something from the experience. Number 8. Jessica Simpson. Of all the celebrity talk show fails, this one is easily one of the messiest and the hardest to watch. When the singer appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres show in 2017, it quickly became clear that she had had one too many. Jessica slurred her words and fumbled over a range of topics, including the length of her marriage to Eric Johnson, which she said she couldn't remember, and then started talking about contraception, saying, "We got an IUD, nothing's going to get into that uterus." And when Ellen asked her about whether she was expanding her billion-dollar business, Jessica started rambling about vitamins and B12 energy. When asked if she's making more music, she claimed that she is, but she struggled to remember just how many songs she actually has. Quote, "I probably have about 38 or maybe 36 or 39, and Ellen said bluntly, "You don't have 38 songs." It really wasn't until 2020 that the singer addressed the incident in her tell-all memoir called Open Book, when she admitted to having drank before going on air. She claims that she's still so embarrassed by her behavior that she can't bring herself to watch the interview almost 3 years later because it was a weak moment for her and she said she wasn't in the right place. But in recent years, she seems to be doing a whole lot better. Number 7. Harry Belafonte. This one is truly hilarious. The singer appeared on Eyewitness News to promote a documentary made about himself named Sing Your Song. But what viewers got out of the interview was a laugh, all because Harry was fast asleep when the anchor tried to speak with him. Eventually, the newscaster Layla Santiago ended up shouting at him, saying, "This is your wake-up call. He's meditating, he's taking a little nap," which caused all three newscasters on the show to erupt in laughter. His publicist later told the station that it was a technical glitch and that his earpiece wasn't working, so he decided to take the time to meditate before the interview. His publicist added that Mr. Belafonte is 84 years young, but sharper and more awake than most who have been interviewing him. Maybe the world would be a better place if more people took a moment to meditate. But in Belafonte's defense, it was probably pretty early in the morning during a time of filming. Whatever happened, the clip, which was from 10 years ago, only recently went viral after it was used to create a deepfake footage of President Biden dozing off while being live on air. Number 6. Dua Lipa. At first, the interview seemed to be going really well until some awkward questions were asked by Dua Lipa that made everyone watching pretty uncomfortable. During an episode of The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, Dua was guest hosting and she accidentally referred to Gwen Stefani's partner at the time, Blake Shelton, as her husband when they were not married. She started off the friendly conversation by saying, "So I heard that you've been spending quarantine with your husband Blake Shelton at the ranch in Oklahoma. Who else was with you? How was that?" But after a little silence, Gwen just replied by saying, "Well, he's not my husband, but that sounded cool when you said that." But what really fixed this moment is the fact that after 5 years together, Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton did go on to get married. What's even funnier is that she posted about the engagement on Instagram, and Dua Lipa actually commented on the news by referencing the cringy moment and wrote, "I guess our little interview aged well. Congratulations, best news." But whether or not Jimmy Fallon regretted having her on as a guest judge is something that still remains to be seen. Number 5. Katy Perry. Katy Perry's 2017 interview with Ellen DeGeneres is a disaster from start to finish, and they're both partially to blame, although for different reasons. Things grew awkward really fast when Ellen forgot that Katy had once been married to Russell Brand. During a game of Will You Parry Me, a game where the singer was asked which celebrity crush she found more attractive, Katy said, "Do I have to get married again?" After a pause, Ellen looked genuinely confused and she just said, "You are not married?" To which Katy said, "I was, when I was 25. Remember you gave me some wedding gifts on the show?" When the moment was becoming a little too embarrassing for the singer, she began making scissor motions, telling Ellen to cut this part of the interview out. But it only got worse from then on as Ellen launched into the game, which made a slightly unhinged Katy pick between Harry Styles, Chris Martin, and Leonardo DiCaprio. But she got a little too honest and said, "What if I've already kissed a bunch of these people?" The whole episode led to speculations that Katy was tipsy during filming, but we'll never really know the truth. Number 4. Kourtney Kardashian. For the Keeping Up with the Kardashian star, one of the biggest live TV fails came with her interview in 2016, just weeks after Kim Kardashian's horrific Paris robbery ordeal. Shortly afterwards, Kourtney appeared on Australian program The Today Show to talk about her latest project, before the hosts attempted to turn the conversation towards Kim. Quote, "We're very sympathetic and horrified, so we were wondering, how is everyone going? How is Kim doing?" Kourtney looked really frustrated and just said, before looking at somebody else in the room, most likely her publicist. An awkward silence ensued as her whole face went blank and she looked beyond the camera, muttering something under her breath about having someone come in. The presenters were confused as well, before they realized what was going on. David Campbell asked, "Hello, Kourtney, have we lost you?" Before the silence became unbearable and Kardashian's face disappeared off screen. The host became frustrated at the response and insisted that Kourtney should have just said that her sister was fine. To this day, her response has fans divided over whether or not it was even appropriate. And number 3. Ellen DeGeneres. Celine Dion was not the least bit amused when she went on The Ellen Show in 2007 and got criticized for the fact that her son had long hair. Trying to be funny, Ellen outright told Celine that she was forgetting to cut her son's hair, then showed a photo of the cute little boy with shoulder-length hair. The issue is that Celine has probably gotten that same line from countless other people and was very tired of hearing about it. Ellen did not expect her to take the question to heart the way she did, and suddenly the tension in the room was so thick that you could cut it with a knife. Celine then began defending the length of her child's hair, asking Ellen if she had a problem with it. Quote, "Some people shave the head of their children and people say, oh, isn't that terrible? Well, I don't even cut my son's hair, and they say, oh my gosh, when is she going to cut her son's hair, you know? Whatever I do, I won't please anyone." She then explained that it was her son who made his own decision to keep his hair long, but Ellen had already sensed that she had made a mistake and swiftly changed the topic to Celine's music career after the uncomfortable moment. Number 2. David Letterman. Even though Lindsay Lohan visited The Late Show in 2013 with the intention of promoting Scary Movie 5, David Letterman spent the majority of the interview talking about the star's forthcoming return to rehab. This one was really bad because as soon as she sat down, Letterman said the actress looked remarkably well in a condescending tone. He then began asking invasive questions about whether or not Lohan steals things and manages her money responsibly. Despite all of her attempts to change the topic of conversation, the host kept going back to the question of rehab, like when was she gonna go, why was she going, and how long she planned to stay there. Eventually, the actress became frustrated and just said that they didn't discuss this in the pre-interview, while asking Letterman to focus on the positive. But even though she was clearly uncomfortable, he once again brought it up, and so by the end of the conversation, Lohan was literally in tears. The interview resurfaced online last year and has since sparked a wave of backlash against the veteran talk show host, who, in all fairness, has a pretty problematic history when it comes to making women uncomfortable on his show. Number 1. Cardi B. This one really takes the cake. On the after show of Love and Hip Hop New York, host Nina Parker asked cast member Asia Davies a question about her relationship with fellow co-star and ex-Swift, but before Asia could respond, Cardi sent a heel flying in Asia's direction, a signature move that we all know way too well. Cardi then demanded that Asia admit that she had an issue with her. Quote, "You judged me because I was a stripper, say the truth." It was immediately clear why the two had been positioned so far away. After trash talking her for a little bit, the artist was ready to throw down again with Asia. In fact, Cardi needed a whole team to keep her from laying hands on her rival. But the rapper may have been right in the situation because Swift admitted that Asia did not respect Cardi because of her past. He allegedly had to explain to her several times that she was no longer a stripper, and she's moved on from that and is making music now. So when Asia refused to answer the question about why she didn't give Cardi a chance, her rival went into full attack mode. And what ensued is the televised disaster that you can still watch to this day.
At number 10, Hugh Grant. Hugh was once banned from The Daily Show after having a really bad interview that really affected the show's host because the actor was being so rude. Jon Stewart, the former host of The Daily Show, said in an interview that Hugh Grant was the absolute worst guest he'd had on the show. He spoke about how when Hugh was on to promote his film Did You Hear About the Morgans, Hugh was making a huge scene backstage and was just being really mean and annoying to the people who were working on set. Apparently, Hugh was allegedly going around saying that he had better places to be. He also got really upset about the clip that they played from the film, saying, quote, "What is that clip? It's a terrible clip," to which Jon replied, telling Hugh to make a better movie. You could really tell that Jon was fed up with Hugh and his attitude on the show. Jon went on to say that because of his poor experience with Hugh, he'd never have him back on his show. At number 9, Harmony Korine. I think it's an unspoken rule that when you're a guest somewhere, you should try to be on your best behavior. One person who really should have followed this rule is director Harmony Korine, who's best known for the movie Spring Breakers. There was once a time when Harmony made a number of appearances on The Late Show with David Letterman in the mid to late 90s. This was also during a time when Harmony was reportedly on a lot of drugs. Though he was a frequent guest on the show, his appearances just stopped all of a sudden, and no one really knew why until 2013 when Letterman revealed the truth as to why the director was banned from coming on the show. Apparently, Letterman caught the director going through Meryl Streep's purse one time, and that was just the last straw for the late night host. When talking about this fateful event, Letterman said, quote, "I went upstairs to greet Meryl Streep and welcome her to the show. I knocked on the door and she was not there. I looked around and saw Harmony going through her purse. True story. And so I said, that's it, put her things back in her bag and get out." End quote. After that, Harmony was no longer welcome on the show and hasn't been back since. Before we carry on talking about these rude celebrities, why not take a moment to leave a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, and while you're at it, consider subscribing to the channel to see more videos like this one. At number 8, Bobcat Goldthwait. I think this goes without saying, but don't go setting fire to things. Back in 1994, actor Bobcat Goldthwait was a guest on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and during his guest appearance, the actor decided to just randomly set fire to his chair. At the time, Jay thought this was just a spontaneous bit, but in reality, Bobcat came prepared for this as he brought lighter fluid and a lighter that was hidden up his sleeve. Luckily, the other guest who was there that night, Lauren Hutton, was quick on her feet and doused the flames with a cup of water.
Jay understandably was very unhappy with all this and banned Bobcat from the show. Not only that, but the actor was also charged with arson for this stunt and was ordered to pay over $3,300 in fines, some of which went towards replacing the chair he set fire to. He literally damaged the set, and if that's not rude, then I don't know what is. At number 7, Piers Morgan. I feel like when a celebrity asks for something specific, it should be given to them. I'm not talking about anything material like demanding a cup of ice chips or something. I mean a specific request in reference to the way that they're treated. For actor Kelsey Grammer, he made a very specific request when he was doing an interview with Piers Morgan, and when that request wasn't honored, there was a falling out that led to the actor being banned from the show because of the drama. When the actor made a guest appearance on Piers Morgan Tonight back in 2012, he requested that a picture of his ex-wife not be shown. He's willing to answer questions about her, but just didn't want to have a photo of her to be aired. Well, Piers didn't exactly honor that request, and when a photo of the ex-wife was shown, Kelsey stormed off set. The actor's publicist said that Piers had to take accountability for his actions because Kelsey was so mad about the situation, but instead, Piers barred the actor from his show. That was pretty rude of him. At number 6, Gene Simmons. I think we can all agree that Gene Simmons is kind of outlandish. He's a guy with a lot of energy and no filter, so when it comes to interviewing him live, you never know what he might say, but you can only hope that it won't be too offensive. At one point, the singer was a Fox favorite, making regular appearances on their programming where they would discuss hot topics in the world and would share their opinions on things. They liked the guy and liked having him on their show, but after causing a stir during a meeting at Fox and making some rude comments towards some of the other staff members, Gene got banned for life, and it was a hot topic of its own. Some of the things that Gene said to some of the women at the network got leaked, and it's not something you would want to have said to you. Let's just put it that way. After all of that went down, the singer was not welcomed back on their programming because they didn't like the way he behaved. At number 5, Sharon Osbourne. Talk show host Sharon Osbourne found herself in some hot water earlier last year after she made some comments about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry that not only caused her to get backlash, but also lose a friend. Sharon Osbourne and Cheryl Underwood got into a heated argument surrounding Piers Morgan's comments about Meghan Markle. During this feud, Sharon backed up Piers' comments about Meghan Markle's mental health, and this frustrated Cheryl because she didn't like the comments that were being made about those involved. The two got into a very heated debate that ended with a lot of drama, sparking a conversation about Sharon's ideals. She was called a racist, and a number of other accusations came out about how she's used various slurs in the past when talking about her other co-hosts. As a result of this, the network for their show launched an internal investigation, and that ended with Sharon being let go from the show. At number 4, Kelly Osbourne. Now, we just talked about Sharon Osbourne and her talk show scandal, but her daughter Kelly has also been in her share of controversies, including one that happened while on a talk show that kind of ruined her career because of a rude comment that she made. During an episode of The View, Kelly Osbourne really missed the mark when trying to clap back at Donald Trump, even though she was trying to diss Trump, and ended up getting in enough trouble herself. Just shortly before this episode aired, Donald Trump, who was at the time only a presidential nominee, was saying offensive things about the Latinx community and how he wanted to deport them. I'm sure we're all familiar with this one. Well, in a very poor attempt at clapping back at Trump's racist comments, Kelly said, quote, "If you kick every Latina out of this country, then who's going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?" What Kelly was trying to do was defend the Latinx community, but rather than stand up for them, she ended up offending them even more, as her remarks were interpreted as saying that the Latinx community is only good for being housekeepers, as depicted in many racial stereotypes. After facing so much backlash and realizing the gravity of her words, Kelly issued an apology saying, quote, "I want to start by saying I always take responsibility for my actions. In this particular case, I will take responsibility for my poor choice of words, but I will not apologize for being a racist, as I am not." At number 3, James Corden. Recently, TV host James Corden found himself in some trouble with fans after his Spill Your Guts segment of his show started facing backlash. Fans were calling for James to take accountability after he made some comments about some Asian foods that he had on the show that some fans thought were offensive. Because the foods that they use in the Spill Your Guts segment are supposed to be ones that you wouldn't eat, the fact that some Asian foods like balut were used and called, quote, "disgusting," made a lot of people take to the internet to call for accountability and an apology from James Corden. Apparently, James had been making these types of comments about a lot of different Asian dishes on a few occasions, so some people have said enough is enough and even created a petition calling for the removal of the Spill Your Guts segment. At number 2, Mark Summers. Summers. When it comes to talk shows, sometimes you can never predict what's gonna happen. These shows are often used to catch up with a celebrity and just talk about life and whatnot, but sometimes these conversations can turn into brawls when the wrong thing is said, and this is pretty much what happened between Burt Reynolds and Mark Summers in 1994 when they were both guests on Jay Leno's talk show. The two men got into a heated brawl after some jokes were made that offended the both of them. Essentially, Mark Summers made a comment about how he was still married, while Burt at the time was going through a divorce, and it made Burt pretty upset. In retaliation, Burt threw some water at Mark, and that's what sparked the fight. It gets to the point where Jay Leno just can't keep the show together because his guests were fighting so much, and producers even went so far as to bring out pies for Mark and Burt to make it look like this fight was staged. After this, people got talking, and some people came to the conclusion that this brawl was uncalled for, and since Mark started it, he felt the most backlash. And finally, at number 1, Ellen. In late 2019, actress Dakota Johnson sat down for an interview with Ellen, and some people see this interview as the one that started this whole Ellen is mean scandal because of how rude Ellen was. During the interview, Ellen berated Dakota about the fact that she wasn't invited to Dakota's birthday party. People saw this whole debate as incredibly unnecessary, but the part that people loved the most was how Dakota shut Ellen down. When Ellen said that she was mad for not being invited to Dakota's birthday party, Dakota in response said, quote, "Actually no, that's not the truth, Ellen, you were invited. No, last time when I was on the show last year, you gave me a bunch of crap about not inviting you, but I didn't even know you wanted to be invited." End quote. Dakota was even backed up by one of the show's producers who reassured Ellen that she was invited and that she just didn't show up because at the time, she claimed that Dakota's Malibu party was, quote, "a little too far for her." Dakota shutting Ellen down and not being made to look like the bad guy Ellen intended was great for fans, and following Ellen's cancellation, fans started to realize just how rude Ellen was.
Beginning in the countdown, number 10 is Howie Mandel. Although he's a very successful comedian and a lot of people would defend his humor, there will naturally be people out there who just don't find him funny. He's also known for his rowdy and loud personality, and one person who isn't a fan of it is Piers Morgan. Turns out he didn't care for Howie's cheerful attitude and silly jokes, so he banned him from returning to his talk show. The comedian never really did anything to personally upset him, and there isn't some big drama to the story. He simply just didn't like him on the show. Piers said that Howie was too irritating to have on his show, and even went as far as calling him the most annoying man in the history of planet Earth. That makes it crystal clear, Piers Morgan. Clear as glass. You do not like Howie Mandel. Coming up next, number 9 is Madonna. At first it might be shocking to think that someone would ban the Queen of Pop herself, but there is one talk show she is permanently banned from. She too got banned from Piers Morgan, and he made sure that everyone knew about it. Back in 2011, he made a public statement saying that he would never allow her to return to a guest on his CNN show at the time. He called Madonna, I quote, "an irritant in my life for 20 years. So it sounds like they've had some beef for a while then. He said that she would only be invited onto his show if she made an apology to him on live television. There's been different rumor mills on why he dislikes her so much, but his exact reasons are still kind of unclear. He just said that she is responsible for a series of crimes against him, whatever that means. Rolling into the number 8 spot is Gilbert Gottfried. He's a talented comedian but is known for having a dark sense of humor, mainly insult comedy. He's been titled crude, inappropriate, but also hilarious. I think people's personal opinions on him would just vary depending on their sense of humor, which is fair because we all have our own sense of humor. But radio and television personality Howard Stern wasn't a fan of his comedy when he appeared on his talk show. The two of them got pretty heated with one another, and Howard said that he was being talked down to by Gilbert. He also took a joke too far and spit up cupcakes behind the scenes while the cameras were still rolling, and Howard just was kind of frustrated by it. He didn't really get it and he didn't find it funny. He was actually once a regular on his show, but he has never appeared on it since, and Howard does not have plans to bring him back. Moving on to number 7, we have Howard Stern. Well, isn't that just a funny little coincidence? What comes around goes around, I guess. He issued a few different bans on other celebrities, but was on the receiving end for one of them. It all came from his longtime feud with Jay Leno, which all started after Howard accused him of stealing bits from his own show. Not to mention the chaos in 1995 when Howard appeared on his show and brought 2 nearly naked women on stage and started sucking on their toes when Leno interviewed the next guests. He was so mad with this weird and erratic behavior that he actually ended the show early by walking off the stage. In at number 6 is the Kardashians. I am not going to name the girls off one by one because they all got banned from a show as a family, like a group coupon kind of deal. Like a Groupon. Back in 2012, during an episode of Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, the CNN news anchor Anderson Cooper was asked if there was anyone he would refuse to have on his show at the time. He responded with, "I'd say generally any member of the Kardashian family." There wasn't much of an explanation why, and people were actually confused because just a few hours before that interview, Khloe tweeted about how much she loves the newsman and even referred to him as a silver fox. Which is just awkward, because clearly y'all are not on the same page with one another. Halfway through at number 5 is Kathy Griffin, another comedian whose content focuses a lot on dark comedy and controversial subjects like religion, politics, and LGBTQ rights. So there is bound to be a few people that she offends or frustrates. Throughout her career, she's been banned from more talk shows than anyone else on this list, and they include The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, The View, Ellen, and The Late Show with David Letterman. The reasons vary from making derogatory comments all the way to taking her clothes off. True story, video proof is still on YouTube. While she was on the David Letterman's talk show, she decided to take off her clothes on live television during their interview. She literally undid her dress, pulled it down, exposed her entire bra and her stomach, and the fact that she was not wearing underwear. True story, and then she had him zip it back up, and it's very uncomfortable to watch, but I think you should. Sliding into number 4 is Hugh Grant. How could anyone possibly ban the charming actor? I mean, am I right? Well, it is possible, and Jon Stewart banned him from The Daily Show with Jon Stewart back in 2009. He said his decision is justified though, and claimed that Hugh was extremely rude when he appeared on the show. He said he was cursing, complaining about everything, and people around him complained that he was annoying pretty much everyone on set. But down the road, the actor admitted that he was in a bad mood that day, and he tweeted out, "Turns out my inner crab got the better of me with TV producer in 09. Unforgivable. Jay Stewart, correct, give me kicking." At least he admits it, right? I mean, we have all had bad days. I'd be lying if I didn't say I was cranky sometimes. Alright guys, we've made it to number 3 and we have Joan Rivers. The comedian legend was once a permanent guest on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, but she ended up landing a gig to have her very own late night show on Fox, and their friendship soon came to an end because of it. She made history for being the first woman to ever host a late night broadcast talk show, but it turned out to be a flop, and Carson felt betrayed by her because she left, so he banned her from returning to his, which I get. The ban even continued when Jay Leno took over in 1992 because Jay Leno was just trying to respect Carson's wishes. But in 2014, the ban was finally lifted by Jimmy Fallon when he did his premiere episode as the host of The Tonight Show. Taking over the number 2 spot is Adrien Brody. The actor completely shocked the audience with a joke that has gone down in history for being so inappropriate and offensive. Back in 2012, he was hosting SNL and he went onto the stage to introduce the rapper Sean Paul, but he wore a wig of fake dreadlocks and attempted this horrible Jamaican accent. The joke gone wrong was enough for him to get banned from ever returning to the show. Not to mention, the producer Lorne Michaels is said to hate when celebrities go unscripted on his show and do things that haven't first been approved or at least discussed, because I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have approved that joke. Winning the number 1 spot is Sinead O'Connor. The singer-songwriter first rose to fame in the 80s and has always been controversial and open about her political views and beliefs. But she's another person who got banned from SNL for pulling a stunt that went too far and did not have people laughing like the show's intentions are. While she was singing a cover of Bob Marley's War, she took out a picture of Pope John Paul II and started reciting the word evil. And then she went on to rip it in half and say, "Fight the real enemy." The entire studio was shocked and left in complete silence, probably feeling super uncomfortable, not really knowing how to react to something like that. I'm confused. I don't understand.